Ron G, aka your console, the Net Worth Nation. Today's Financial Friday presentation presented to you by the Net Worth Nation consult Ron G, aka love being with you guys today. And before I get started on today's video, I wanted to talk about a lot of you guys. I see you looking around and clicking and hovering over the content. Don't be shy. Go ahead and like, click, subscribe, make comments, and if there's any specific topics that you really want to talk about and dive deeper into, please, guys, by all means, don't be shy. We talk about all of it here on the Net Worth Nation broadcast. So, again, welcome out, guys. Today's Financial Friday workshop, we want to talk about some intimate uh, conversations as it really does relate, as we call it, to our psychology as it pertains to money. Coming your way in just one short second. Rolling. All right, guys. So, uncovering our money mindset and the psychology behind it. This is a really touchy topic because what I found out when I started to do this series about a year or so ago, I didn't realize how much of these things that I was discussing really affected me as well. I mean, I suffered from a lot of these things that I'm going to share with you guys today. So it just goes to show you that none of us are immune to it. And we didn't just get here overnight. We didn't just finally figure out how our finances were supposed to work. With some of us, people like myself, it took a while and a grind to get where I am now. And so I share you guys' pain with that. And I guess my teaching is probably going to be a little bit more compassionate as I can definitely understand as we all have walked in each other's shoes. So many of you out there, welcome back to the channel. Always a pleasure to see you. And so here we go. So what is the uncovering of our money mindset? Like, what is behind it? And so there is a psychology, whether we want to accept it or not. And the psychology, it shows us that we have these core beliefs about money that I don't even know if us really knew it was there. And it shows us, at least I'm going to try to do that today, about uncovering some of the traumas that are actually in there, whether we realize it or not. And it allows us to kind of see how we develop the type of thinking and the thought processes that we have. I mean, these things did not come to us overnight. This was a developed process. So, what do I mean by that? What exactly is financial psychology? Let's start with that question. And then again, it is the study of the mind and the behavior as it evolves and it relates around money and all the spendings of money and things like that. And so, what we have to realize is that whether we accept that reality or not, we have experienced things that we may not want to give too much credence to for obvious reasons, because in some cases it can be quite embarrassing to admit it. But a lot of us had mental financial scars that in some instances are still there today. And so hopefully in today's video I can uncover some of it. So what is this and why is it so important? Well, it's important for a few reasons. Number one, having the correct mindset as it relates to your money, it not only just impacts you, right, in your immediate circle, but it impacts generations, guys, generations that are coming up behind you. A lot of the way we think has a big impact on the people around us and the generations behind us. So it's very important for us to be covering this topic in its entirety today, and so that we can kind of unpack and peel back those layers. So the reality of it is that when most of us were very young, there were certain things that was ingrained in us, certain things that we saw that we may not want to admit that, had an impact, but it did. And so a lot of the little things that we saw gave this deep seated financial belief system in our minds. And so what that means is that one of us came from, if not one of all, or combinations of a few different types of households that I'm going to go into in today's podcast. So the first household that you potentially could have came from and was infected at a very early age could have been the household where you heard most of the time your parents tell you that money did not grow on trees. Now, at first glance, you would say that's there's nothing wrong with that, Ron G. It's good to have a healthy respect to know that money doesn't grow on trees. We don't want people just being frivolous and spending and just not having a conscious effort of money's resources. Um, but there is a thing to be said about this mindset, and I'll touch on it as we get a little further. But again, the money doesn't grow on tree mindset. You may have also heard this is a big one. Money is the root of all evil. We've heard this so many times. And if you've come from a Christian household or some form of spiritual household, you've definitely heard this more ways than one. And it's almost to the point where it made you afraid of that side. Either you just dove all in and said, I'll take my chances, or you were very, very aware and very, very nervous and concerned about this kind of thought process. So that could be one of the households you came from. Or you could have come out of the household where you hear the time is money and money is time. The money is time and time is money household. Again, at first glance, you may say, well, what's wrong with that, Ron G? Isn't money time and time is money? And on the surface, it seems like it's harmless, right? That thought process or that ideology. But what we realize as we go in a little bit deeper, there are some concerns that this type of mindset can affect us uh, in negatively in more ways than one. And we'll touch on that in a quick second. So the first thing I wanted to say is when you think about these ideologies, they absolutely shape this. They shape our mindsets, and that shaping is either for better or for worse. I mean, it is what it is. It's either for better or for worse. It's not really no in betweens there. And so we have to be honest about that. And we have to make sure that we're recognizing that some of these goals are shaping our thought processes from a very, very early age. And guys, when you're shaped from a very early age, just don't think that when you hit your 30s and 40s, you can just turn a switch on and off, and all of a sudden you're just this brand new person that thinks totally different. It doesn't quite necessarily work that way. And so this is why we're uncovering these potential concerns as we do the video. Another thing is that most of these financial setbacks and struggles and challenges and things that we face as adults, these are learned behaviors. These were taught to us because when a child comes into the world, we're daring, we're adventurous, right? We'll do almost anything. You see children doing all types of things, and you almost have to teach a child. Well, you do to tone it down, to restrict. I do see some childbearing parents that allow their children room to grow, space, and things like that. And then I see a lot of conservative parenting where they won't let the child venture out but so far. And so again, that has a lot to do with the way they were brought up, right? Another thing, I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about some of these thought process. So let's think about the money doesn't grow on trees ideology, and what are some of the risks and the dangers of that type of ideology. The first danger we have to understand is that it really does produce what we call a scarcity mindset. Now, at first glance, somebody says, well, how did you get that from that scarcity mindset? And exactly what is a scarcity mindset, and what are some of the things that a scarcity mindset produces? Well, it produces a few things. Scarcity mindset individuals focus more on lack, meaning they focus more on what they don't have instead of what they do have. And so because they're focusing so much on what they don't have, they they struggle to focus on the assets or the things and the values that they have in order to make their financial landscape productive. Another thing is there's a lot of fear with scarcity mindset, meaning that they won't take any types of challenges or risks that could obviously open up the door on their financial resources. In other words, improving it and getting it better. They stay away from that. They also are very, very limited and fixed on their worldview and their perception. You'll talk to individuals like this, they're always looking at the news, always seeing something bad going on, and using those negatives as a reason why they may not have taken some financial risks that could elevate them and grow their situation. So, again, these are the scarcity mindset things that we don't even think about, and it's really just comes down to a zero sum thinking. I'm not going to put anything extra in. I'm not going to do anything extra. I'm going to hold on to what I have so tightly that I can't afford the risk of losing it. And so, if you know anything, and we talked a lot about how real wealth is accumulated, it's definitely not accumulated from people that are afraid to spend money and invest money, of course, in the right way. So that scarcity mindset is extremely dangerous. Another thing, and if you, like I said earlier, if you come out of a, excuse me, a spiritual household or a Christian household, you probably heard the money is the root of all evil. And again, unfortunately, when you think about it, that's not what it says. And so this is why it's important to understand biblical truths. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And I could go out on a limb and say the love of anything that's anti God or anti Christ, anything you love more than your maker or your God or the one who can save you from sudden death is going to be dangerous no matter what it is. Not just money, it could be anything. It could be your possessions, it could be your wife, your kids, anything that you put before a supreme God could get you into a lot of trouble if that's the way you believe it. So again, we have to be very careful the way we think, meaning that the Bible itself, if you think about the good book, it offers a plethora of teachings that go into discussing stewardship and how money is handled biblically. So this narrative that people that are in the church or saved or whatever it is that they don't touch money with a 10-foot pole is absolutely ludicrous. That is false. As a matter of fact, it looks like God from scripture wants people that serve him to have a better understanding of money, how money works, the way money should be used, and the benefits of having to use these resources to further his kingdom. And I don't mean further the pockets of a pastor, okay? I'm talking about furthering his kingdom. In other words, spreading the type of love throughout the world that makes a difference. Case in point, we know that Abraham was rich. The scriptures say, nah, he wasn't rich. He was what? Very rich. Abraham was very rich. He is one of the supreme matriarchs of the Bible, Abraham, Father Abraham. We also know that Job was extremely rich, wealthy in all regards. And think about the Job story here, real quick, before I jump off this topic. If God really thought that money was the root of all evil, why would he restore Job back to the wealth that he had tenfold once he went through his trials and tribulations? He would have said, it's better for you to stay broke, disgusted, busted, with sores on you, with the dogs licking off you. He would have left him in that status, but he didn't. It was only for teaching and rebuke purposes to show the people of God how you should handle resources. If I take it from you, I can give it back. So just a quick sidebar on the Job story. And then, of course, last but not least, we all know about Solomon, one of the greatest kings that ever lived, not just in Israel, but in the world, period. Solomon's wealth preceded his legacy. I mean, the Queen of Sheba, they said when she finally came and met Solomon, she found out that he had even superseded his reputation. She said, I see that you are everything said about you and some. So Wealth is not a thing. And we even know that when Jesus was born, they brought him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Those are the items and gifts of a wealthy and royalty. So, without that, further like moving along, biblical truths. The next thing I want to talk about is this myth of time is money and money is time. Okay. We have to stop the nonsense and change this false narrative. This is such a false narrative because the reality of it is time is the only currency that we can never ever get back. And because you can never get it back, it has to go to the highest height of the pecking order of value. Okay. Value is when something is rare. Value is when something is precious. Value is something that everyone can't obtain. Right. And so there is no one that could obtain time back. No one except God Himself. Right. So, with that being said, this time is money mindset is very, very dangerous. I'm going to tell you another reason why it's dangerous. It's really dangerous because most of us are taught to trade in our valuable time and assets for money. Let me give you a true story about me. A few years ago, well, it's been some years ago, when my children were very, very young, I was going through a business downturn, and I was like, man, I got kicked in the stomach, in the gut back in 2007 and 8, like most people did, and I was spinning, and I was trying to figure out how to recuperate my business, and it just didn't happen. And a friend of mine introduced me to the railroad industry, and he was like, man, you can make great money in here, man. I know you had a business, I know you had a company, but this is a good place. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a shot at it. And lo and behold, he was absolutely right. There was a lot of money to be made in the railroad. I will not deny that. 100% facts. The thing is that I learned something in there. When I finished blinking my eyes, all of a sudden, my 8-year old and my 12-year old and my 11-year olds, now they are full grown children. By the time I realized what was going on, they were grown, meaning that worked overtime. I worked the time and a half. I worked the holidays. The trains broke down. You stayed out there on the train until you got relieved. So I spent hours and hours. I used to work what they call the extra listen. So I spent so much time out there that when I woke up, literally, I promise you not, I looked up, my kids were grown. That's how fast it went. And you know what? Time is money and money is time is a false narrative for me because I can't get that time back. My kids now are full grown adults. And while we do still spend precious time with each other, it's not the same as when they're 13, 14, 15, and so on and so forth. So that's a true story. Just want to give you that nugget as well. Now, moving right along, why is this so important? Well, it's important because financial trauma can have a debilitating and destructive impact, not again, and I said this earlier, not just on your life, but on the lives of those coming behind you. It's a generational scar. It's a generational scar, and we have to recognize that and do the appropriate action. And so, for better or for worse, what we are taught affects us no matter what. And so, we have to pay attention to this narrative. We just can't let it, you know, ignore it. We can't. So our belief systems, absolutely, they affect us. They cause a lot of static in our minds. A lot of times you're trying to do things, you're trying to accomplish certain goals, and depending on how and what you believe, it can cause and run a lot of interference with your beliefs. Your beliefs about money are absolutely influenced by your upbringing. It is what it is. There's no way, shape around it. No way around it. What your parents went through, and your grandparents went through, it will absolutely affect you. So there is a good side to that as well. We won't have much time to go into that in this particular video, but we will definitely revisit this on a future Financial Friday. Another thing that we have to really give credence to is the social impact. What we see as society is all around us now with the World Wide Web and, excuse me, the social media era that we live in. It's just a major, 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 major thing that's going on constantly in our minds. And so where you work, where you hang out, where you fellowship, will you play ball? All of these narratives that impact our thought processes and the way we think and the way we vibe. And so I do believe that there is a thing to be said about the type of media that we consume, type of books and literature that we read. All of these things have a major, major, major impact on the way we think financially. And again, there's always that S word that we're hearing a lot of now, that systemic belief system that is definitely influenced by our socioeconomic statuses, race, ethnic, gender, etc. These things also play a major, major role in the way we see ourselves on the financial spectrum. And so this is something that cannot be ignored as well. We have to bring light to that. So when we think about this, how do we improve our money mindset, Ron G? You definitely shared the problems. You've definitely highlighted all of them. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? I think it has a lot to do with what we decide we do with this, right? And like we learn in the computer industry, in our minds, which are very much like computers, we have to realize the there comes a time where there has to be a reprogramming done, right? Many of you probably watching this video are probably in your mid to late 20s and higher, and that means that you are right there at the cusp of when you should get started with the reprogram. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are thoughts that are in your head by now, and all of our thoughts anywhere from 28, 29, 30. Your mind has been already set on certain things, and so you will have to certainly go through the reprogramming process, because when you think about it, you'll realize whether, especially since we've done this video, that you probably qualify for a couple of these things that we highlighted. And so now you realize that you have to do the resetting of your thought process if you're going to change that financial narrative. And then it really, really comes down to what we put in, right? What we put in here is what comes out. And so we have to understand we can't put the trash in, trash out mindset anymore. We have to start putting value, and we have to start uplifting and putting the types of techniques that the other guys on the other side that are very successful are doing. We have to start mimicking those practices and those routines if we're going to improve our financial mindset. So, without further ado, we'll talk more about this in our next presentation. Once again, Ron G, aka Your Console, the Net Worth Nugget. I really appreciate you spending time with me on this Financial Friday. Let's talk soon. Peace. Bye for now.